Here in Soho we have today some of the original working patterns and jackets from the film A Hard Day's Night. Let me show you. This is Paul McCartney's design pattern, showing varying seaming, lapel shaping, back detailing and trouser styles, of course. This is Ringo's. Being a slightly shorter chap, he had a pattern all of his own, as did the other three. Here we have the varying shapes of the clover leaf, the fish mouth, the M-shaped lapel. These were used extensively when we constructed the suit. And let me just lead on to what I've got today. I've got here two of the original jackets from Hard Day's Night. We have the black jacket here that John wore in the most famous scene with Dougie Millings, my father, when he was measuring Paul. Paul moved away from camera. John walked forward, cut tape measure, I now declare this bridge open. This was the very, very jacket, made of a very, very nice 100% black gabardine, silk lining, hand buttonholes, horn buttons, etc. This he wore on that particular scene, and we have it here today. My dad and I were working in Old Compton Street, Soho, making lots of suits for people like Cliff Richard, Marty Wilde, Tommy Steele. We got a phone call from Brian Epstein, who had heard of our fame in Liverpool, wanted to bring down his boys, and that's how it all started. This was November '62. He'd brought in previously, 3 months earlier, Joey and the Pacemakers, and we had made them a set of suits. He was obviously very happy with the look we gave them. And then the phone call said, I'm bringing along 4 guys. We're going to be there December, I think around the 4th. We want a set of suits that was going to be something completely different to what you've ever done before. Certainly nothing like Cliff and the Shadows wears. They came in on that due date. They came out of his old Hillman, California car, parked outside in Old Compton Street, came up our rambling staircase to the first floor. And between my father and Paul McCartney, they started sketching, and the idea of the round neck jacket suit came to be. Well, Pierre Cardin had come up with the idea in France of a collarless jacket, but what we were doing for the Beatles was something quite different, because it was a round neck design with a braided edge, which we made initially in silver grey with a black piping, with a bell cuff and with pearl buttons on the front. So it was quite different to what he was doing. And anyways, my father had always said he was making sort of round neck design suits for ship's stewards in the late 30s for the shipping lines. So it wasn't new, but it was the way we did it. It was a new twist to it. At that time I was 18. I'd just had a 2-year apprenticeship at one of the top tailoring houses in Savile Row, and I then joined my father when things were getting extremely busy and he needed a little bit of support. After the round neck suits, that was a hard act to follow, because it was something totally innovative, so we had to come up with something completely different. And yet again, we decided on a sort of very skinny 4-button fronted jacket with a little black velvet collar and a little velvet turn-back cuff on the sleeve. And that we made for them in black, navy blue, charcoal grey, and 1 or 2 other colours besides. They were the next set, really, that sort of hit the public eye prior to designing and making the silver grey suits for Hard Day's Night, which they wore in the appearances in the film. The Beatles were probably maybe a year or so older than I was, and we got on great. I mean, everyone sort of, we had, you know, great times together. Used to come up to our workshop, have cups of tea, bacon sandwiches, fittings for the suits. Now, when my father moved from this first floor premises the year later, in '64, we moved to a much larger place, which we then needed, and we had a grand piano installed on the first floor. And of course, people like Paul and others were tinkling away on the piano as well as having a suit fitting. He thought it was terrific, because he had been a singer in the 40s. He was a crooner in a band, so as well as cutting, he used to sing in the evening semi-professionally. So he appreciated all type of music, but of course this was something so different that the whole world, you know, just exploded when they heard it, including him. For A Hard Day's Night, there was probably around 6 suits made. They had 3 or 4 sets of the silver grey stage suits, and they had lots of other suits just for their other scenes outside of studio and location. Well, the thing was that we always had to have a set of suit in the cleaners, freshly pressed, for photo calls, so that we always were holding at least 2 sets of suits in our shop in Soho, ready for an emergency, and many, many emergencies did happen. On one occasion, a set of suits was taken by Neil Aspinall to dry cleaners, came back minus 2 pair of trousers. So, you know, the kids were stealing the jackets or the trousers as mementos, and we were having to sort of keep the numbers up. Mainly the fittings were at Twickenham Studios, here back again, and at Abbey Road. When we were at Abbey Road, and we were obviously friendly with George Martin, sitting in the control box waiting for them to have the chance to try a jacket or trousers on, we were sort of very patient, and the hours would just roll by, and they'd send out for teas and coffees or whatever, sandwiches, and sometimes we were there till 1, 2 in the morning just waiting for that moment at Abbey Road Studios to fit the suits. We could take them back to our workshop and get them ready for, you know, the start of filming. Well, when we visited them at the Scala for the fittings of the grey suits, we of course had to take at least 3 sets of suits along, because they were working so hard, sweating profusely, and we were changing the suits. We had a messenger take them back to our workshop to re-iron them, and basically it was just, you know, all hell let loose really, just for that period. Well, when people did ask us after we had made the suits for the Beatles, or particularly bands would ask us, other groups, can we have a set of round neck suits? Of course, we would say no, because it was a very exclusive thing. We have the 4-button, silver grey, high black velvet collar suit with a wonderful panel back that was seen on many, many occasions. Beautifully hand-tailored, blue silk lining, wonderful hand-sewn silk buttonholes with pearl buttons. So there you have it. These are the suits that Douglas Millington & Son made for the Beatles and Hard Day's Night. Thank you.